Hey guys, sorry about the delay. We are starting right now. Three,
Cool.
two, one. Welcome to the Lightforge. This is Adwookdub.
This is Merps. We are in Witchwood. Witchwood launched just a few days ago, actually, but it feels like it's been a lot longer.
Forever.
Yeah,
Oh
I
my god,
know.
all the differences. And none of it is because of Witchwood.
Yeah. So we're definitely going to talk about the Witchwood, but we're going to talk about a lot of things. So one thing that we didn't address in the last Lightforge, but it actually happened a little bit before that, was they came out with a patch and they stated that basically bad offerings would be moderately reduced, right? So whatever moderately means, essentially your bad picks, like your booty bay bodyguards versus the other stuff, and you end up picking booty bay because it's like the best thing. Those picks are reduced, which means you just get a higher quality deck on average, and that came out just a little bit before the expansion dropped, like less than a week, right?
Yeah. Well, not just less than a week. It came in like literally like 2 or 3 days before that.
Yeah, yeah.
And it came after. So anyway, we haven't had a chance to talk about it. And that is really the biggest thing going on right now in the arena. So once again, this really reminds you of what happened with the synergy picks, in that it was something that happened a couple days before a new expansion that was a change fundamentally to the whole structure of the arena, and then the actual expansion came out and wasn't nearly as impactful as the change that changed how arena was like done before that, right?
Right, right.
No warning, no like anything, and you add the fact that Witchwood cards, like we said, they're not the best cards. They're like evenly scored, right? They're like okay. So you add the fact that, and this is the first time I'm pretty sure of this. So we've got a lot of stats from arena drafts, and if you guys haven't heard of arena drafts, they're a system like ZD Man does it. He's been a longtime supporter of us, and he runs arena drafts. They use Lightforge tier scores, and it's like an automatic drafter thing that tracks your runs and everything. So give it a try. It'll also help ZD Man gather data, and he shares his data with us. So. It will also help us know what's going on, in addition to the HS replay numbers, which we'll also cite because those are public. Okay, so anyway, before we got off on that tangent, there is no offering bonus. I don't want to say this is 100% confirmed, because this is one of those things where Arena Drafts has so much data, and it's not the most popular data gathering source, but I feel like at this point there's been enough runs, and you can also look at the number of cards offered to like take an index on HS replay, and they all seem to back up the same idea, which is that really you're seeing Witchwood cards about as often as you see other cards.
It definitely feels like that for me.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't played as much as you have. You've definitely played them a lot more than me. But yeah, whenever I play, it's just sort of the meta that I was used to, or sorry, not the meta, because of the changes. The cards I was used to with like a sprinkling of these new cards, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like surprised when I see them, not just like so it's really weird. It's not like a lot of other expansions in which they come out and I'm just like almost bombarded with all these new
Yeah.
cards, right? And especially in the first couple of days, we talked about this. People like picking the new
Yeah.
cards,
Exactly.
so not seeing them everywhere and on like every other turn,
Mm-hmm.
it feels a little bit weird.
Yeah. And you really should be able to just look at the HS Replay Arena played cards list, the most popular list that keeps updating. It should just be filled with Witchwood cards, because in theory they would have at least a plus 50% offering rate. If not, if in the case of Ungoro, for example, it's plus 100%. That's why Ungoro cards are everywhere. But here it was not as impactful, because there's either no offering bonus, which is what I think is happening, or there's like such a small offering bonus that's negligible.
Yeah.
Um, And instead, what we have is this very interesting phenomenon that Taro actually made a post about like a week or two ago, and we didn't like really like pick up on it because it wasn't that much, but you could definitely see it right now, and it's having a pretty big impact in the arena, especially with the rotation. I think it made it worse. It's that rare cards are offered much more than common cards. Like, I think when Taro was doing the data, it was something like 38% more or something like that. And it was like some odd quirk about how 10.4 was done. But then the rotation happened. And right now, like, it's insane. It's almost like double.
Huh.
Yeah. And you know what's a rare card?
What's a rare card?
Mind Control Tech is a rare card.
I thought
You
you
know
were
what
gonna say
else is a
something
rare
else.
card? I haven't gotten to that yet. I haven't gotten to our main our main thing yet. I didn't want to scare people because
Okay, okay.
Mind Control
Yeah,
Tech is
I thought you were
something
gonna
people knew about.
I thought you were gonna scare them immediately, but I'll just play along. What else is a rare card, Adulta?
Spike Ridge Steed.
There you go. Okay, okay. So there was no mid, like you were just going. Okay,
I was just gonna
I
go
get it now.
directly from MCT to Steed.
Okay, great. Tell me about Spike Ridge Seed.
Spike Ridge Steed right now is the sixth most seen card in the arena according to HS replay data. That's not the sixth most seen card in Paladins. That's the sixth most seen card in the entire meta, beating
That's
out
so
every
dumb.
single neutral except
That's
five
so
of them.
dumb. Oh my gosh. Which five are they? I'm curious.
I don't have it out in front of me. Give me a second to gather it. So why don't you tell us what is going on with Spike Ridge Steed in this meta?
Okay.
Well, why
so
don't you tell
here's
us first, like, why this meta is so, like, concentrated, right? Why do you see so many cards so often?
Well, here's the thing, right? Like when Blizzard essentially says, "Okay, we're going to offer good cards more often," or they did they say the inverse, right? We're going to offer bad cards
Moderately less often, which was scary because it wasn't, like, slightly less often. It was, like, moderately less often.
When I saw moderately, and some people noted this as well. If you go to Arena HS, like one of the people was just like, when I saw moderately, that's when I knew to be scared. Because I didn't like, you don't really know how to read it, but it's more than slight, right? Because it was slight, they would have said slight. But when they do that, and you get to dip into these good buckets very often, there's also a spell bonus, right? There's still a spell bonus, and like you see a lot of rare cards, and just with Steed as well, it's like see a Steed, pick a Steed, and you just have so many chances to grab Steeds. You had a deck with like 3, and you're just like, yeah, this is about average. And then we had a deck with 1, and you were just like, what?
I was offered no Steeds, literally not a single Steed in one of my Paladin drafts, and I was like, this is the worst Paladin draft ever for this meta.
Well, okay, so you sacrifice your Steed so someone could get 7. That's kind of how it is.
I hope that person is a complete noob and wrecks everybody.
But yeah, I mean, so people are playing Paladin because they recognize it as good. There's a spell bonus. There's also this bonus.
By the way, if you're wondering why they recognize it as good, 55% plus win rate for Paladin. No one else is more than like 51.5. Rogue is number 2. Remember how we predicted last week that Rogue and Paladin were going to be on top? We thought they were going to be on top, and they are on top, but like we did not predict the 3.5% difference between the two.
And honestly, we were just like, okay, look, we don't know how Blizzard is going to bucket, but let's just look at what's leaving, right? If you look at just what's leaving, it's kind of like, okay, well,
we'll get into the how Blizzard misbucketed Paladin thing later.
Oh, yeah. But so you look at sort of all of these factors put together, and you're like, yeah, it's kind of easy to see why you're going to see Steed so many freaking times. And also this whole moderately thing, the quality of decks in Arena are really good. Now, it's not the Lich King meta, because you don't...
The legendary rate, I don't think, has gone up, actually.
No. So you don't see all those legendaries. So we call it the Lich King meta, and it wasn't just Lich King. It was like, you saw so many legendaries, though.
Yeah, you saw so many legendaries. I mean, it's still kind of the Lich King meta. I will say, my first 10 losses in this meta, 4 of them I lost directly because of a Lich King that my opponent played. 4 of 10. It's calmed down since then. I have only faced, I think, 1 Lich King, that defeated me after the first night. But I was so triggered after the first night, I actually stopped playing because it's a 10th win. It's not like I won 12. I just got one loss on that run, and I just stopped playing. I'm like, I can't take it anymore if I lose another game to a Lich King tonight. So I can't risk it. I can't keep playing. Like, I don't know what's going to happen, but I don't want to be there to see it.
Oh man.
And
yeah.
and the reason there were so many Lich Kings wasn't just that I was getting unlucky. It was also because most of these Lich Kings didn't actually come from people's decks. Here's an effect that we did not talk about, and we really, really, really should have. And this is on us. We missed it. And that's Stonehill Defender. Because Stonehill Defender's pool got reduced by like a third. Like some ridiculous amount. Maybe it was a quarter. Anyway, it was a ridiculous amount of cards that Stonehill Defender's pool got reduced, which increased its ability to get Lich Kings for all the classes. And in Paladin, you also have, by the way, Paladin best class, right? In Paladin, you also have Tyrion and Sunkeeper Tarim, which are both insanely high-powered legendaries. And you get them from Steed. You get them from Stonehill. So when you add all three of them together and add in the class bonus, you have something like a 15 to 20% chance to get a ridiculous legendary from Stonehill Defender if you're playing the Paladin. Like to get offered one of those cards. And that's not including other really, really good taunts. That's like actual game-winning taunts. Yeah. I think that's not even including Primordial Drake, you know?
Right. And I mean that's something in which I definitely kind of forgot about, right? It's just the available pool. You're taking away 3 expansions, you're introducing 1, so all of the other available stuff fills in the gap a little bit, right? The new expansion fills in, but the old expansions, or sorry, the cards that were available before are now just more prevalent.
Okay, so back to what we were talking about Steed. Okay, so here are the 4 cards seen more often than Steed. Stonehill Defender.
Okay, makes sense.
Saranite Chain Gang. Witchwood Grizzly. And Lone Champion. And all 4 of these are lowly bucketed compared to like where we normally think of them, compared to the Lightforge rating.
Right. I see these cards, and like all of these that you've stated, I'm like, I pick these so often. Like it makes sense. So first of all, it makes sense that they're neutral. You should see neutral cards the most often because come on, all 9 classes, right?
Literally, even if everybody wanted to pick Paladin every single time, you'd still only get Paladins a third of the time. That's how ridiculous it is that Steed is even up there. Like, we get it. There's a class bonus, you know, like a class card bonus, and there's a spell bonus. So you do get offered Steeds more often than these other cards. But still, you're starting off with a, at best, 1/3 penalty. Probably much more, because sometimes you just don't want to play Paladin.
Yeah. So, man, that's disgusting. I don't understand how that works. Because like you said...
if you're wondering, there's no other... I think they go up to the top 12 that they show you on HS Replay. There's no other class cards up there.
Because there shouldn't be.
Yeah. Because your Paladin's other super power cards are like Aldor, which is a minion, and you know they don't get offered as much, and like Vine Cleaver, which you don't want too many of, whereas you can get 6 Steeds and be fine.
Yeah. I've seen that question before. It's like, how many Vine Cleavers is too much? I'm like, well, you could do 2, and then the third one is like, ugh. But with Steeds, I'm like, I don't know. I take 7.
Yep.
I take like the 8th one. Would I think about it? Maybe.
No, it's just it all depends on whether you can still have a curve. After you have a curve, right, like 1 through like 5, let's say, then literally every other one of your cards can be Steed, and it would be the best choice.
No, that's true. If it is like
outside of like Aldor and Vine Cleaver and other insanely good cards, like you would never drop power level to not pick Steed.
Yeah, no, that's fair. So, that's disgusting. Yeah. And when I'm facing Paladin, I fully expect them to have it on 6. And this is not like... This isn't constructed in which you have ways to kind of deal with these things, whether through silence or just overpowered cards. Like, Steed just ends games right there. Way too often, I'm just like, okay, well, they have... I can't clear everything. And if they have a Steed... Even if I'm ahead by like a decent amount, a Steed evens it out, right? And then they play the Vine Cleaver. Then they play another Steed.
It's not the first Steed. The first Steed is rarely game ending. It's the second Steed makes it very difficult for you, and the third Steed means they win the game.
Yeah,
And we're at the point
exactly.
now where once you get up to a certain win rate, you expect 3 Steeds to show up in the game,
Right. And
not
then
even in their deck.
it's like you said, they Steed and then they Steed more, or they Vine Cleaver and then they Silver Sword,
Mm-hmm.
etc., etc. And here's the thing, right? Like this is like when we were doing sort of reviews for a lot of Paladin cards, like a lot of people, I think in people's minds, it's a lot easier. They're just like, oh, you just clear the Paladin, as if like you always have that opportunity, or you like always
Yeah.
have
Sometimes
that
they're going to be
option.
able to Steed, and once they get the first Steed off, they'll get all the Steeds off because then they have the board.
Yeah. So Paladin is way at the top. A lot of it is just because of card quality, and a lot of it is just because of one card, like
Mm-hmm.
overall card quality, and then also one card. So,
There's another card that we'll talk about later for Paladin that is
oh
also making
yes,
a pretty huge difference because it's been misbucketed. But to be fair, I feel like, and that card's Silver Sword, by the way. Silver Sword is misbucketed, and that's causing some issues with Paladin. But I think that's one of the ones where I think most people, because we got so much pushback for rating Silver Sword high, so I think like you can't really fault Blizzard for thinking Silver Sword was not like the most premium card ever.
it was definitely a
When
very polarizing one.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
when other people, thought that it wasn't the most amazing card ever too. Although we were very much on top of it. Silver Sword's over a 200 on our tier list. It
yeah.
beats out Vine Cleaver, by the way. We had in our initial card review videos, we didn't have it there, but with the final numbers that came out before we actually published our tier list, already had Silver Sword beating out Vine Cleaver.
Yeah.
And then we fixed a bug, and both Vine Cleaver and Silver Sword went up more.
Which is what I don't think anyone is going to be like, oh man,
Hey,
those
if you
are.
were thinking about Aldor, that's now there's a differentiation. Because there
Yeah,
is competition there for Paladin. Paladins have such good cards. Like Vine Cleaver's a 178 now, Silver Sword's a 201, Aldor's a 164. So Aldor used to beat out both Silver Sword and Vine Cleaver, I think, when we first published it.
I also just agree. Outdoor, because boards are just getting very weird,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like boards just get weirder and weirder, even though Witchwood is sort of like a boring expansion because a lot of the power level of the cards are like kind of blah. But yeah, like you just have very polarized boards, stuff that stick. It's more about like just sort of weird board states rather than like Border Fist Ogre and then you outdoor and you win, right? So yeah, I definitely agree. Like I've drafted outdoor, not saying it's a bad card at all, guys, right? But it's a little bit harder to get that like consistent, like good use out of outdoor every single turn past like turn five.
Yep.
Which you in many metas before, it was just like every single turn, I was like, damn, this is a good outdoor. Damn,
Yeah.
this is a good outdoor. So
And keep in mind, Paladin was strong before this expansion too, so it's not like they're getting any micro adjusts or something. Their cards are just strong, and they're very suitable for this meta. So that's where we're at with Paladin. And I say they're suitable for this meta because there's a lot less early game mass removals, and so there's also a lot less early game for most classes. So Paladin is just easier to get on the board if you draft a deck to get on the board. And because you have so many Steeds, you will draft a deck to get on the board. And especially with the Silver Sword guaranteed in every single deck, you will definitely want to be on the board. And so you do that play. No one punishes you for it, and you just win. So if you're wondering what the meta is right now, it's just a lot of Paladins winning a lot of games. This is the win rate that like Hunters had back in the Hunter days of before the nerfs. Before the offering rate nerfs. It's just as bad. The game's even drag out for longer, so it's potentially worse. And if you're looking at what classes not to pick, really all the classes are kind of okay. Like Druid and Warlock is falling a little behind according to HS Replay for the win rates. Rogue is number 2, Mage is number 3, but these are all within normal ranges. Like you'll get a little bit of an edge picking these classes, and these are for average players. So Rogue actually is going to do better in the hands of a good player right now than where it's even listed, because
that makes sense.
rogues are a little tricky to play as far as the classes go. But at the very bottom, and I don't think anyone's rescuing this class, and it was widely predicted, it is the Hunter. And I will now formally
gosh.
withdraw and admit and concede that no, Shaman did not become the worst class. Shaman is actually, for average players, hanging out at 47.6%, which is bad, but
That's
not awful. For
not
better
bad. Yeah.
players, it's going to go down lower, but I don't think it's worse than Hunter, even for like a very good player who hates RNG.
I mean, this is what I said, right? Like, it's just, yeah, they're missing a lot of good cards, but then you look at the, the list of cards that
The
they still
buckets.
have.
It's they're bucketing. They're bucketing too high. They have too many of the good buckets.
Too many good buckets. Yeah. And I mean, before their bucketing was insanely good, right? Like if you look at the pre-expansion, the average shaman deck, it was just stupidly high.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's still good. It's just yeah, they are missing those insane cards, and also just the swingy potential of evolves, right? Like evolves can, I mean, they can lose you the game, but they can win like any game just randomly as
Yeah.
well. So they're missing that.
Yeah. So if you're looking at the top classes, there is a not like Shaman aside, the top three classes have something besides Paladin have something in common, which is they have class cards that transform a minion and so effectively silences them. Rogue can sap, Mage can polymorph, Priest can mind control, or other ways of taking your cards, and then Shamans can hex. Warrior's the only one up there that can't silence, and Warrior is only fifth above Shaman, and Warrior's got insane cards. Remember how we predicted that Warrior was probably going to be third?
Yeah.
And they're not third. They're actually off by quite a margin compared to Mage and Rogue, and that is entirely because of the Paladin meta. Once Blizzard does the micro adjusts and nerfs Paladin back offering rates back down, Warrior's going to spike right back up to where we thought Warrior was going to be. I promise you. Because all these other classes, and Shaman may go down a lot, because this is the Steed meta. And you have some classes that have tools to deal with Steed, and you have other classes, namely Druid, Warlock, Hunter, and Warrior, that don't have any tools to deal with Steed. And so they're very disproportionately being hurt right now. So
Yeah,
I
and it's
am
also
giving up my Shaman argument for this current meta, but once Paladin gets nerfed, I am going to. I'm going to. I think there's going to be this effect that's going to make Shaman drop down to the bottom again.
yeah. We'll see. Because Blizzard, I think, after they get a decent sense, after they've compiled some data, because right now they're changing things quite often, right? Changing things quite often, and
What do you mean by quite often? You mean like
what? Sorry, so like the offering rates, bucketing, like they're not afraid to move fast, right? Like,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
hopefully. Like, here's the question, right? When are things getting rebucketed, and when, if any, fixes to the arena is going to come? Like, when are one of those things happening? Well, one, we're going to talk about offering buckets after this, and we'll give you some stats. But obviously, a lot of cards actually are very heavily misbucketed. Some are, like we talked about the Silver Sword. It's understandable, right? It's not a mistake we made, but it's a mistake a lot of other people who know a lot about the arena made. So, can't fault them too much. You can't be perfect. On the other, and we made mistakes too. Our
yeah,
biggest
of course.
mistake we have yet to fix, but we'll fix for tomorrow. And I think that's like ring the bells or whatever that card is.
Sound the bells.
Sound the
Yep.
bells. And I don't know why it's wrong yet, which is why we haven't fixed it yet, because it probably means some of our other stuff is wrong too. I think it has to do with buffing health. And I needed some time to look into it, but for now we're probably going to take it out of the algorithm just to raise it. Anyway, the other ones, like, what is that thing? Night Prowler. That's the one. Night Prowler's the 4 mana 3/3 that gets +3/+3 if you play it on an empty board. It has a battle cry. That's rated in the same bucket as Primordial Drake.
I mean, you see it in the super premium, right? And it's always up against super premiums. Didn't we have a couple of picks? It was like Steed or Night Prowler or
Yep.
something. Yeah. Also, the sad thing I saw, like, okay, guys. So whenever you see a Night Prowler being played, that is purely like there is never any reason, because no matter what is presented to the person picking Night Prowler, there had to have been a better choice because it is in the highest bucket
Yep.
right now.
And
So
we rate it on the Lightforge an average of, I'm going to have to scroll a lot to find this, so give me a second, guys. 74. Which is below my line of such a crappy card it should not be in an arena.
that's terrible.
And Blizzard looked at this and said, you know what? We think this is going to ruin the arena. This is such a high tier card. Superpower. And you know why they thought that? Because they thought the same way a lot of people who thought this card was going to be good. By the way, this card's win rates are horrible. Like, it doesn't matter if you're a good player or a bad player. It's just an awful card. But Blizzard thought, look, 4 mana 6/6. Even if it only happens some of the time, it's going to be so good. It's not. So, on one hand, Blizzard clearly misbucketed this. On the other hand, I get a feeling that they did not want to actually see this card in the arena. So, I think they purposefully bucketed it a little high. Like, maybe they thought it should be in the second or third bucket, and they instead put it in the first bucket just to not see it. Because clearly, if you bucketed Night Prowler correctly and then offered it a lot, it's going to make a messy arena. Especially if they actually thought Night Prowler was good and not trash. So the first mistake they made is they thought Night Prowler was good and not trash. The second mistake they made, which is arguably a mistake and arguably a strategy, is they made it a much higher bucket. Because if they really thought it was trash, you never see trash cards. Like, you just, it won't be an issue in the arena because you don't see enough of them. But if they thought it was good and everyone's going to be offered 3 of them in every draft, and then enough people are going to take them and it's going to mess up all of arena, they could be like, we're going to be conservative with this card. So it's one of those, like, it's a little less unthinkable than you may think. Assuming Blizzard is smart. And we're giving Blizzard a lot of credit for the strategy stuff that we have no idea if they're doing or not. But I can see it. But regardless, at some point, they still thought it was a good card.
Yeah. So I have seen this argument getting tossed around. It's like, okay, well, it's like, you think Blizzard got it wrong, but maybe they're just playing like, 4D chess.
Yeah, well, they're not consistent with their 4D chess. So either they're getting that wrong or they're getting all the other cards wrong. Pick one. And like, also, they're getting 75% of the cards wrong, or they're getting 25% of the cards wrong.
You have to think about their philosophy with the buckets as well. It's like, then if they're playing this 4D chess, they're also just lying to everyone. Because their whole thing, and they came out with a video saying it, we want people to have offerings of similar, like, quality cards, right? So if they are, playing this 4D chess, then they are being, like, not genuine here, right? Then they're being like, oh yeah, we want to offer.
That's not necessarily true, because these are there's no stats for these cards yet. So I think they could legitimately be conservative about these and not be lying to us.
Okay.
Right? Because it's just their guess anyway.
Like, okay.
And we know how bad they are at guessing to begin with. So erring on the side of being conservative is very much like, I think it's a good thing. Like, it's not like
okay, so looking forward, I'll say, like, this is not, like, it's basically not a defense or it's not a justification for putting bad cards into really high buckets.
Yeah, but just in the beginning, in the very first one, Blizzard has no stats. That's what we're talking about here. I don't think this is like a strategy and Blizzard's going to keep it like that. Like, I don't think Blizzard's like, Firefly's ruining the arena, let's put it with Primordial Drake. I think Blizzard was like, Firefly's really insanely good, let's put it with Primordial Drake. And, Firefly's not that good. But they do run into the problem where Primordial Drake and Bowmare stats must have been so high that they needed something else to put in the bucket, and Firefly was next up on the list. So, unfortunately for Firefly. But that's where, like, I think that's where you just have to expand the size of the largest bucket, of the top bucket. Because you can't get to a point where, like, if you're putting poor Firefly in there, you need to put everybody else in the bucket below it up. And especially when most of those cards are actually much better than Firefly to begin with, because something in their stats screwed up with Firefly. Or, like, bad players are somehow really good with Firefly, or they're using a lot of data from the Synergy Picks era, in which Firefly was a lot better. Anyway, more offering bucket. Offering bucket stats. Here you go. You've been waiting for this. This is how you succeed in a draft at a very basic level. Everyone will do better by following these rules, which is really just look at the Lightforge tier list. But if you are not using the tier list whenever you're drafting, here are some like ones that are clearly like so far off. Like, never pick these cards, okay? Night Prowler and Wanted are both in the very top bucket. Never pick these cards. They are way lower. Apple Bomb is a decent card. It should definitely not be the top bucket. You should never pick Apple Bomb either. But I just want to make it clear that Apple Bomb is still a decent card, whereas Nightprowler and Wanted are horrible.
Yeah, Apple Bomb is a little bit more justifiable, but still, no.
Like, here are all the Witchwood cards in the top bucket, by the way, according to Arena Drafts. Blink Fox, which is obviously insane.
That
Nightprowler,
is an insane card.
which is insane in the other way. Rotten Apple Bomb, which is a totally, like, average-ish card. I don't know how this even got in here. And Wanted, which is kind of random, and I don't know how you could even think that card is insane. Wanted, by the way, if you don't remember, is that rogue card that's 4 mana, deal 3 damage. If you kill something, get a coin. Like, in what world of Arena is that the overpowered card?
Yeah.
Like, how do you even come to that conclusion? Like, I mean, I at least understand Nightcrawler, right? I understand Blizzard's making, like, you know, a mistake and thinking that it was powerful, and then I understand that they may be conservative. I have no idea what the hell went on with Wanted.
Because in the best case scenario, it's 3 mana for 3 damage. But, you know, like, you front load it, right? Mm-hmm. Like, front load it so you can use the mana a little bit later. And it's like,
well, yeah, so you can basically, like, be more effective with it, and you can trigger some synergies with the coin, like,
right? But it's Arena. I don't know what you're doing with that. So
okay, so that's the top bucket. And again, we don't have all of them because Arena Drafts has limited data. So I'm not saying this is a complete list of all the super over bucketed, like, cards or anything like that. But these are the ones that Arena Drafts has enough data on that they will tell us that these cards are definitely problematic. And also in a weird turn, and I don't know why it's the case, but and this is also why Nightprowler is such a problematic card. Nightprowler, for whatever reason, is literally the most seen card in a draft. It's epic, by the way, and there's no Witchwood bonus that we can normally, like, see. Just putting all of that out there.
Huh.
But yet Nightprowler is a minion.
No, by the way, it's not epic.
Oh, no, it's neutral.
It's
okay.
It's
wait, is it rare? Okay, never mind. Never mind. I take that whole thing back.
Wait, what?
I take that whole thing back. But it's still really an awkward fit. Like, it, according to Arena Drafts data, it more than doubles the offering rate of any other card seen in this bucket.
Yeah. I do see it a lot in the draft. Yeah. And it sticks out like a sore thumb, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You definitely, it's like Vine Cleaver, Steed, Nightprowler.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was our exact pick. Like, I think that was like
more than once in a single draft. Yeah. More than once.
We saw it in the exact same order too.
It was the same order
first, and then Vine Cleaver, and then Steed, and then later on in the draft, it was the same pick, same order. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, okay. So that's the top one. The second to highest group has the following cards you should never pick. Tangle for Mystic. Remember, this is the second highest group is one Basilisk is in. There's a lot of good cards in that group. The very top group actually has very few cards in it, especially not neutrals. Anyway, the second group is Tangle for Mystic, Pumpkin Peasant, Ghostlight Angler.
Okay, you should tell people what these cards are.
Oh, do they not know? Do they not know all the new cards yet in Witchwood? Tangle for Mystic is your 3/4 3-mana card that gives you a random 2-drop and your opponent a random 2-drop.
Yep.
I don't know why Blizzard thinks this card was that good. This ability, like, even if they thought it was positive, really should not be thought of as that positive. And we think of it as generally a negative because of the RNG. But that's for good players, and Blizzard may not be thinking about that. Anyway, don't take Tangle for Mystic. Pumpkin Peasant? We have it. Where do we even rate Pumpkin Peasant? I remember we have it very low.
I don't know.
But it's like 95 is our neutral rating for Pumpkin Peasant. And they have it with Basilisk.
So, guys, for those of you who don't know, Pumpkin Peasant is a 3-mana 2/4 lifesteal, and it switches stats or swaps stats every single turn it's in your hand. So it goes from 2/4 to 4/2. Yep. Neutral common card.
Ghostlight Angler is the 2-mana 2/2 Echo Murloc that Shamans have. I don't know. Maybe Blizzard had a weird view about this particular card. It's higher than the other cards that are Echo. Like, I don't know where they put Militia. It's not on this list. I don't know why.
Militia?
Yeah. but I think Militia's probably in the second or the third bucket. The Walnut, the Walnut Sprite is in the
Phantom
second bucket.
Militia is
In the
a
second
3 mana.
bucket?
Phantom Militia is a 3 mana 2/4 taunt and echo card.
Right. And Walnut Sprite is the 3 mana 3/3 echo card. I think they're in the same bucket, both in the second bucket. So they're both a tiny bit over bucketed, but not really. But the Ghostlight Angler is in the same bucket, and that one is not nearly as good as these, because 2/2s are just a lot worse than 3/3s, and Blizzard does not seem to think that for whatever reason. All right. So in the third bucket, Curio Collector and Marsh Drake are our picks for super over bucketed. Curio Collector is the mage card, 5 mana 4/4. Whenever you draw a card, gain +1/+1. I don't know, kind of weird synergies Blizzard thinks you're going to be getting all the time with this card, but you don't get that many synergies with this card in the way Arena is structured right now, and without synergies, it's a really bad card. So there's that. And then Marsh Drake is just awful for all classes except Rogue. And even in Rogue, it's not this good. So, there you have it.
So these buckets are, it's not like Marsh Drake is in a lower bucket.
They have this issue where all neutrals are treated the same. They don't rebucket them per class.
Right.
And again, all of these, this is just so you know, they're going to rebucket these at some point, I'm guessing pretty soon, because they're going to have the stats, and they're going to know that they really screwed up on some of these cards. Anyway, and we're not saying all the cards they misbucketed. These are the ones that they have, like, totally failed in the most ridiculous ways on. Like, we're talking, like, more than a quarter of the score is wrong. Like normally if we go more than like 5 points, we consider a card wrong. More than 10 points, definitely wrong. Like more than 25 points are where all these cards are at. Which means like you can't even begin to consider how, like, if it was in our system, it would be like a really big bug. Like I think Sound the Bells is going to move like 25 points about, at least 20 points. And that's because it was a huge bug and we just didn't catch it until then. Because nothing like used it as much as Sound the Bells does. Anyway. The fourth bucket has Felsoul Inquisitor. You want to tell them what that is?
Is that what I think it is? It's the 4 mana 1/6 taunt with lifesteal?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
That is in the fourth bucket, which is really high still. Fourth bucket is still above average, guys. Fifth bucket is average. Anyway, Life Drinker is here. Life Drinker is the 4 mana 3/3, deal 3 damage to your opponent's face, gain 3 health.
Okay.
So like the one that's a little bit better than Nightblade, they thought was an above average card. And Lost Spirit is here. Lost Spirit is that 2 mana 1/1, I think, that buffs your entire board when it dies by +1 attack. That's right, a 2 mana 1/1 that buffs +1 attack only.
Right.
So they somehow thought that was above average. And in the fifth, this is the best one, I think. Well, besides Nightcrawler. In the fifth bucket, so they thought this card was average. It's Divine Hymn. They thought healing your whole board with 2 mana was going to be an average card for Priest, who can already heal the board for 2 mana. So you have to have like multiple minions that have to be healed by like a lot.
I mean, okay, yeah, it's not good, but I guess when you get there, it's sort of like maybe, right? I can kind of see it sometimes in some drafts. It's definitely like Nightprowler is like definitely the one that is just you can't defend that. Like you can't defend it and you can never pick it.
Yep.
I guess I can see like Divine Hymn sometimes.
Okay, so now here are the cards that have been bucketed too low. Earthen Might is in the fourth bucket, which means it's above average, but we have it as one of the premium cards in Shaman because of the number of elementals you can draft in Shaman. And Earthen Might is ridiculous with elementals. So keep that in mind. That really should push you even more towards an elemental Shaman. Book of Specters is in the average bucket. It's like one of our super premium mage cards, like over a 150. Yeah, I don't know why, but that's one of the reasons. Book of Scepters has issues.
Specters.
I keep saying Book of Scepters, don't I?
It makes no sense.
Anyways, for what it's worth, like a lot of cards are in this bucket that really shouldn't be in this bucket. Oh, no, never mind. Hold on. I'm reading this wrong. I am reading this wrong. It's in the third bucket, not the fifth bucket. But still.
Okay. All right. Still.
Still. It does not belong there. And for what it's worth, Corridor Creeper is still in this bucket. Like, they still haven't fixed Corridor Creeper. What else? Woodcutter's Axe is also in this bucket.
The third one?
Yeah, the third one.
Oh,
Woodcutter's Axe is one of our super premium warrior weapons.
Right.
Its win rate matches that on HS Replay. It is not an expert card. You get so many rush minions. And even without the rush minions, it's a really good card. It's also a 2-drop when you don't really have 2-drops in this meta that much. So, heavily misbucketed. And finally, I consider this a heavy misbucket. Silver Sword is in the second to top bucket, which you might think, oh, that's only one bucket away from the top bucket. It's not that bad. But, like, it's literally the way we rate it. For the first copy, it is the number 1 card in Paladin.
Yeah, and once again, this is not like Steed. You cannot take many
I've heard people who got 12 wins with 2 of these in the deck, but I wouldn't recommend it. It would go much lower for the second pick. I'm not saying it's going to make a non-functional deck, but like you should pick almost anything else in that second bucket over the second pick, I think.
Probably. Because you're still going to get a Vine Cleaver. You're still going to get like other options, right? So
it's just that it has 4 charges and it costs 8 mana. So when one's stuck in your hand, it's stuck in your hand. It's basically like ooze protection now. Like, and that takes up a card slot. That's pretty bad.
So first Silver Sword is extremely good. You know, we rate it as such. Second one, I think you just want to think about it, right?
Yeah, you almost will always take the other cards. Like, maybe if you have no other big cards and not a lot of weapons, you take the second one. Because you're going to be offered it in the same grouping as, like, actual good cards. Like, this is the, Fire Plume Phoenix group, right? Like, you can think of it as that.
Right. And you never take the third.
I don't think you ever take
I'm
the third.
sure you guys will prove me wrong and show me like a triple Silver Sword.
The third one is not the reason why they got 12-0.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the third one is just way too awkward. But yeah, the first one absolutely insane. That just shuts down any sort of comeback. And even, I played it when the board was even, or even when I was like kind of a little bit behind, as long as I was not behind with like 10 HP remaining, right? And once again, some people are like, what if you're behind with 10 HP remaining? And then it's like, well, what card is good then?
Yeah.
So yeah, it is just really good.
Yep. All right, so that's kind of it on the offering buckets. Those are the ones that are wildly out of place. The ones that are like kind of like 10 points out of place, we don't really talk about because so many things, not just Witchwood, are 10 points out of place that you could just look on the tier list if you really care about the things that are 10, 15 points out of place, including like almost all the 2-drops. Although they were better about the 2-drops now. I think they moved some of the 2-drop buckets down. But it's still pretty insane. Okay, that's the offering bucket. We'll talk about a couple of Witchwood cards that we played with and we have like some additional thoughts on now. But before we get there, I want to kind of pose this like general question about like, okay, so Blizzard screwed up the buckets and they screwed up the meta.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? Like, not the biggest stretch, not the most unexpected things. At what point would you consider Arena fixed? Because Arena right now is a pretty horrible place to play in. I think everybody agrees, and everyone's just kind of okay. Yeah. I think 85% of people who are good at the Arena agree that Arena is in a horrible place right now. Or at least a below average place compared to usual Arena metas.
I think that's a safer statement. Yep.
And at what point, how many of these things need to be fixed before Arena is like okay again? Because right now, it's not the Arena's unplayable. It's just that if you're trying to apply skill to the Arena on a consistent basis, you can't. And it's basically like the Firelands Portal meta, except you're using Steed instead of Firelands Portal. and it comes out on turn 6 instead of turn 7.
Right. So we've talked about a few issues, right? So number one is sort of the misbucketing,
Mm-hmm.
and for me, that's not something that really ruins the arena,
Yeah,
right?
I
Like
agree.
that's something in which like they can sort of almost continue to misbucket. Like let's say they don't move the buckets for a while, or they move it and they get it still wrong, right? That to me, I'm just like, you know what? That's cool. That's fine. It's not making that big of an impact.
Because before
But
10.4, everything was misbucketed. Like, you could think of
right,
the world
right.
before 10.4 as every single pick was misbucketed on every single pick, unless by luck you got the two similar picks, right?
Right.
So you're
Um,
already at like 90% improvement just by having a system.
yeah, yeah. And this, in some warped way, it introduces some skill, right? Like what is
Well, a
this
very
bucket?
low level
A
of
very
skill.
low level
It's
skill.
called
I
the
know, I know.
consult a tierlist skill.
Or just like look at the card.
Right.
But the power level, the offering of these ridiculously powerful cards, that is really problematic. Like, and it's something in which, look, Blizzard has already moved it more than I thought they would move it, like more often than they would move it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they basically, like with the introduction of the bucket system, we had the Lich King meta, right? And then,
Mm-hmm.
like less than a week after that, it was like Monday to Friday, right? It was like implemented Monday, and on Friday they tuned it down, right? They tuned it down, and I think for a lot of people, we were just like, oh, this is the arena that we know, right? It's like a lot of kind of meh cards were being played.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't see that many legendaries, and it was a lot of like just a lot of like I'll call it sort of fun but boring cards
Okay, that's
uh,
fair.
that were interacting. And then now, after sort of this moderate change, right?
Mm-hmm.
It feels a lot closer to the Lich King meta
Yeah.
than the boring meta.
No, again, no legendaries.
No legendaries, but Steed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just
Like, I
it's just
think
not
what happened, and this is really probably what happened, is they moved things halfway back to where it was before, and they thought, well, if legendaries were half the problem and our over bucketing was half the problem, and we don't touch the legendary thing, and we move the bucketing thing, we move the top buckets back up half, we're really only going 25% of the way back to the old meta, and that seems like something everyone will be accepting of. And then they didn't figure out that, oh, it's also rotating, so you're already going to see all of these cards a significant percentage more than you used to. And oh, by the way, you're going to miss bucket some stuff, so then the stuff that you're seeing is going to be even more prevalent because Steed is going to keep showing up against Howler, which I think is not just miss bucketed but also bugged to show up all the time. And then you have this mess of a problem that you're dealing with now, which is one of the, like, I think this meta is a worse meta than the Firelands Portal meta. I think it's debatable, but my personal opinion is it's worse than Firelands Portal. It's not as bad as the first version of the 10.4 meta. It's certainly not as bad as the Synergy Picks meta. But
Yeah, and I think a good way to sort of explain it is to contrast this sort of problem with like constructed, right? Like in constructed, I mean, you have your pick of whatever cards, but in constructed, a lot of it is about sort of this theme, this goal that you synergistically create this path to victory through your selection of 30 cards. In arena, it really is just about like you're obviously trying to win, but you're winning off the back of these like just this hodgepodge of stuff.
mm-hmm.
And sometimes you have like a path to victory, like elementals, right? You manage to draft somewhat of an elemental deck, but that's still not a path. It's just like, oh, this is a way I can win. And
Mm-hmm.
even if you have a quote elemental arena draft, let's say you go 12 wins with it, probably only 3 of those wins were because you hit the elemental. Like 3 to 4 of those wins were because you hit the elemental. In 8 of those wins, it was just because your deck was good and you played well, and you
Mm-hmm.
had good cards in general. So whenever there is an increased offering rate in really good cards like Spike Ridge Steed in a format in which you don't have many answers and in a format in which your opponent can't get to like, really like they can't beat just this natural amount of value, right? Just this overwhelming goodness. And they're sort of forced to play you like both decks are forced to kind of play the same way. It's just not healthy, right? Like it's the same thing people had with Firelands Portal. It's just independently powerful and it was offered a ton. With Steed, when it's independently powerful and offered a ton, there's not much you can do. Yeah, it's like, oh, well, you can silence it. Okay, you don't really draft silences, and it's also one of the reasons why I'm like, it's like Polymorph is super premium, Hex is super premium. How many of those are you going to have? You're going to have much less of those, even when you do play those class, than Steeds, right? You Hex the first one, you Polymorph the first one. Okay, what are you going to do about the next two?
Yep. Okay, so I want to make sure that people don't think that we're putting out the position that Blizzard is offering more Steeds than other cards. They are. But they're offering some other cards equal amount. It's a little messy. But the issue is really because Blizzard screwed up in several ways that have nothing to do with Steed itself. One, all buckets seem to be offered equally, except for the few lower buckets. Like, when you get to like the average bucket, it's offered a bit less. When you get to the like total trash bucket, it's offered even less, right? And those are the numbers that they've been screwing with. The offering ratio between the top few buckets have remained stable, and they're all basically the same. Like, one may be offered like 5 or 10% more based on like what we see in the stats, and we have seen in prior metas where we have way more stats. Like in the previous 10.4 meta from arena drafts, and that's all like within the realm of statistical like significance. Like, it's probably significant, but we don't know if that's a Blizzard bug. And I don't know, this arena drafts data, like, I trust it, but I don't trust it to make the claim that the top bucket is like 20% higher and the second top bucket is 10% higher and the rest are at 1. Like, that's what it looks like. But regardless, it's very small changes there. So it's not like they're just jamming Steeds down our throats. The reason they're jamming Steeds down our throat is because they screwed up the rare bucket, which is now being offered at about twice the rate of the common bucket.
Well, should we still use buckets for that? Like common.
Okay, so not bucket. Fine. The rare offering rate. The offering rate of all rare cards are double that, roughly double, maybe a little less than double, but more than like 75% of common cards. And that was never intended, especially when you have your smallest like card pool like in a while, because every expansion that comes in after this in 2018 will just add more cards without taking any away. You can't afford to then skew like your cards in a 2/3, 1/3 ratio, right? Which is what you've done. You want them to be as even as possible so you don't see the same cards repeatedly.
Yeah.
And this is also why minions are never the problem. It's because you also, on top of that, have this weird 75% additional offering rate to all spells and weapons, which we keep arguing is totally unnecessary, but it's especially painful to see when your card pool is small. And when you add the two together, Spike Ridge Steed is seen a crap ton more time than a common paladin class minion would be seen, even if it were the same power level. For no good reason, because Blizzard cannot possibly think, looking at the meta, that this is a good idea. All of these things, like the rare and common one, I hope is just an oversight or a bug or something. That absolutely needs to be fixed, because that is a cause of a large portion of the Steed problem. The other part that I really hope they look at again is their design decision to just create more initiative by raising the offering rate of spells. And it's been around for a year now, and they seem happy with it. But why? And especially when you can now pick in the 10.4 offering, like before they raised it so that you would end up with more spells and weapons and initiative. But now you have the 10.4 offering rates. If these cards are good enough, you would just be offered the ability to pick these at a higher rate. And you already are. So you are doubling up. You're doubling up on this offering rate. You're not just adding 75% to spells, but if it's a good spell, you are actually adding like plus 275%.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a very unnecessary relic from the old world of 7.1 before 10.4 was a thing. and it is screwing with the arena in a very hardcore way that I don't know if Blizzard knows. Like, I'm sure they know what each of the pieces are doing, but I don't know if they have this big picture. I don't know if there's anybody there with the big picture outlook that's putting it all together in an intelligent way that will say, oh, that's the problem because it's double counting this. Like, I know they're good at balance, or I don't know, they're at least competent at balancing constructed in a way that people haven't totally given up on constructed, and that's what they're like, that's what their main skill set. But like arena wise, they've consistently showed a failure to be able to do big picture calculations, and all these bucketing things are just more proof of that. And if anybody at Blizzard is listening to this, please reevaluate why this spell and weapon offering rate bonus is there, and reevaluate whether, like, how it fits in with the 10.4 system.
Yeah. So I think this is a good topic, and right, this big picture thing, because when they created this new drafting system, the bucket system that we call it, your justification for doing it is like, we want to give people a real choice, right? Like, so we want to improve sort of the experience of the arena, like as with all changes, but we want to give people a choice. But then when you do this, it seems like they just sort of passively sort of like carried over all the other changes, right? But then you have to ask, once again, you can't just carry over all of them and think in the back of your head.
And if you were wondering why the rare and common issue was an issue, it's because of the way they used to calculate the odds. Yeah. And they had structured it in a way so that rare cards and common cards are offered the exact same rates. But they carry that over to the 10.4 system, which messed with the math, and so now all their math is wrong because each one is in a different bucket, and it's making different offering rates for each of the rarities different for each bucket too. Like, it's just a total mess. Why? It's because no one took the two systems and said, this was doing this for this reason. This reason no longer exists, so we should not be doing it this way for the 10.4 system. No one looked at it and did that.
I think the spell bonus is a perfect example of that, in which, look, I don't love it, but their justification for it was because we want to give people better options, right? Spells are, like, on average, spells are better than minions. Like, initiative is really good, and they want more interactivity, right? They want people to be able to interact a lot more. They don't just want, like, the first person to drop a minion always has the advantage, and then, you snowball with your Dark Iron Dwarfs and your Bone Mares, and they just win like that. They don't want that. That's fine. And you can see the thinking behind it. But, like you said, Adukta, with this bucket system, what's in the top buckets? There's so many good spells, right? Really good spells are in the top buckets. You give them a choice, especially now that you are offering the top, or the top
few buckets.
Few buckets. Really often, you're going to get a lot of spells.
And a lot of repeats. And there's nothing more frustrating than facing a lot of repeats or seeing a lot of repeats. Like, I'm not saying there has to be like a 2-card per draft limit or anything like that, but is this spell and weapon bonus achieving even a positive result? Much less the fact that it doesn't make sense anymore from a fundamental, like, a priori perspective. It's not even achieving good results. It's hurting the arena.
Right. And not only is it problematic now, if they don't address this, the next time they do something in which philosophically, they want to help out the arena, but they cart along all these other changes, you are just introducing system after system after system that cannot, like, just through chance or just through how the world works, there's no way that these all connect with each other in a positive manner, right? So it's one, okay, we've criticized a lot. I would say, in the most recent change, both of us are huge fans of this idea of making the draft matter more, right? I think, like, it's totally true. When, like, during the old draft, you rarely had picks that actually mattered, that you had to really think about it. Because even though some were off curve, you're not picking the Wisp over the Fireball. You always pick the Fireball, even if you had, like, no early game.
Yeah, I think we get that. I think we know what 10.4 is at this point.
But it's a good, like, and I don't want that to be lost, because we're criticizing a lot, right? But it's sort of like, even though it's good, you can have like four more big changes that are good, but it creates just this like
Yeah.
incoherent
And
Frankenstein.
why? Like, why is it
Right.
doing this? Just get rid of it. Like, it's not like, I mean, I'm sure it's harder than I'm saying to get rid of it, but like, this is why we have double rares than commons. No one at Blizzard looked at it and said, for Witchwood, I think it would be nice in the meta to have 2 times the amount of rares than commons. This would create a good meta because of reasons X, Y, and Z. They said, I did not think about any of this, and so I am not actually saying anything. And then the changes got carried through, and now we see the result. And what I am most afraid of is because, one, Taro brought this change up to Blizzard beforehand. Blizzard knows that rares are being offered more than commons even before the card pool got changed, and they knew that it was a bug in their system, and they were just like, yeah, it seems okay. Like, one random dude who complains about everything is complaining about it. He may be right, but who cares? And then it snowballs into this. And when they're evaluating this, I don't even know if they realize that the rare thing is what's causing a large part of this. And I definitely am almost 100% sure that people at Blizzard do not know or care that the spell bonus is what's causing this. Like, I'm sure that they're sitting there, and even if they're listening to this, being like, oh, I don't Merps hate the spell thing again. And they just don't, like, they're not picking this up. That's my prediction. I may be wrong. Maybe in 2 weeks, they'll come out
We
and
don't
fix
know.
the spell
Yeah.
bonus, and I'll be like, wow, they got it. But this is something that I don't think is a personal preference. In 7.4 was a personal preference. Like, I made the case in 7.4 to not have a spell bonus, and I ended it saying,
Some people that were very good at the game were,
yeah,
were on
no,
the
but
other
I
side.
ended it
Right.
saying, like, this is just a preference of how I want the
Yep.
arena to be, and for the sake of having a more manageable, like, system, right? Of having a more easy to understand system without these random offering rates. But there are different views on it. There is no different views at this point. You're just making an error in double counting. This is objective. Like, the 10.4 system right now has a huge bug, and that bug is called additional spell and weapon offering rates. Like, you have a much better system now of how to adjust your cards.
Yeah.
And I'm not even bringing back the neutral, like, commons and rares, like, offering rates or whatever, because that's still a design decision that exists, right? Like, and that still
Yeah.
makes sense, just because Blizzard doesn't want people to see the basic set. But
I
the
think that's
spell and
fair.
weapon one, the
Right.
reasons no longer exist. I disagree with the neutral one as well, right? Of the random penalty there, because it's really difficult to understand and internalize as a player. But at least there's still some thinking there that I disagree with, but has not been invalidated by 10.4 coming online. The spells and
Right.
weapon
Right.
one, the actual logic behind it is invalidated. And I don't know if Blizzard realizes this. Because I also don't know if the person who designed 7.1 and the person who's designed 7.6 or the groups, I don't know if they're like the same groups or they've efficiently like took out all the correct notes of their reasonings and the knowledge has been passed on. I don't know if that's been happening. Anyway, so I don't consider the arena, like, I'm sure it's like playable in the sense that you can go in and have a good time. I'm not saying everyone is going to be miserable in this arena meta. And they can fix Steed in many other ways. They can literally like just lower the rate of Steed the way they did Abyssal Enforcer, right? With like a slapped on patch thing, and it'll make the arena better.
Oh gosh.
But 10.4 is not fixed. 10.4 is highly problematic in its implementation until they actually get rid of all the legacy systems, which includes the rarities changes. You know, if they really think that rares should be seen twice as often as commons, I welcome the reasoning to it. There can be no reasoning for that I think, like, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's very, very unlikely that I'm wrong that they actually have a reasoning for it. And the spell and weapons thing too. Like, those things are the ones that need to go away. I know we talked about, like, if you listen to this podcast, we started off and we just kept talking about Steed and how we're talking about the effects, because that's what you live in as an arena player. That's what we can see. That's what we can point to. But even if they fix all the symptoms, as soon as another meta rolls around, arena will be crap again. Because you're changing fundamental parts of the system every time you add cards or remove cards or change offering rates. And then new
Right.
problems will just appear. So they could just fix the fundamental problem and have everything be fine, or they can patch it for one card, and a whole bunch of other things will be a little bit unfine, but like people won't care as much. And then the next time they change anything, whether it's an event or whatever, it'll throw everything all off again.
Right. Because it's easy, and I think some people who don't like who haven't sort of analyzed it in this way, if tomorrow Blizzard just says Steed gets the Abyssal Enforcer treatment,
Mm-hmm.
right? People will be like, "Oh, cool,
Good.
that's good."
You
But
talk to us, we'll say, well, effects are good. We certainly don't want you to not do that as arena players.
would it create a better arena for tomorrow?
Yeah.
Yeah, it would. But once again, that's like giving someone with sort of a serious illness just a painkiller,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like it helps, but you've got this issue that will continue on, and you've got this system in place that will only get worse over time.
Yep. Okay. Anyway, I think we've said enough about that. And again, the issue is not the buckets. It is not
No.
how cards are put in the buckets. Like those are wrong all over the place. But we never expect Blizzard to get it perfectly. They did update some of it, which is nice to see, right? Like cards like Amani aren't totally ridiculous anymore. But what do you call it? That card. I'm thinking of a particular card that Lost in the Jungle was very clearly moved away from the top bucket, and now it's a very good pick actually for the bucket that it's in, because it was always like on the top of its bucket or the very bottom of the next bucket, right? So it's not like Blizzard's not tweaking with these things, and they can tweak with these things all they want, but that's not the biggest deal. And we have 100% faith that in the next week or the week after that, or whatever, like very soon Blizzard will fix the buckets in a way that makes it not laughable. But the buckets and the misbucketing is not the cause of this meta. The misbucketing is not the cause of anything that you're looking at the arena right now and you're like, this is bad for some reason.
Right. And once again, Steed by itself, the card, is not the problem. Or
I mean, it's a problem in that it's an overpowered card. It's not the problem in that it's being seen too often. Like,
right.
That's the symptom. Anyway.
Right.
Witchwood cards. Let's talk about actual Witchwood cards.
Oh,
we have yet to talk about any actual Witchwood card besides like Silver Sword, I think we talked about.
Right.
Do you want to so one, as we expected, Witchwood cards are not making a big splash, and then they didn't give an offering rate to Witchwood cards, which again, design decision, I can totally understand. There's not that many cards in the meta right now. You don't really need to give this expansion an offering rate bonus. But yeah, so that's why, and it's kind of not feeling like the Witchwood meta. Right? Like, I think it's fair to say that, like, every deck has, like, 3 Witchwood cards, maybe 4, depending on which class you're in. And it kind of feels like a very small aspect of what the arena meta is like.
Yeah, it definitely does. Anyway, sorry.
But even so, let's talk about some of the cards. The tier list, I think, is widely correct the way we have it. We haven't seen anything that's like, oh my god, we screwed up this whole mechanic, or like, oh my god, we screwed up this card so bad. I'm sure things will be altered as we get a better sense of like just how many elementals are in the meta, rather than our assumptions about where things are bucketed. And I'm sure we're gonna do some tweaks here and there. But in terms of like big changes, I would not expect any. Our opening ones are very good. Maybe legendaries we haven't looked at too carefully yet, but our opening bids, I think, were pretty much on target for all of these cards, except for, as I mentioned, the Bells one for Paladin. That is much better than we currently have it, and we'll move that. But I want to fix the fundamental problem first. Like here at the Lightforge, we fix the fundamental problems, not just the symptom. So you're going to see Steed go up too. You're going to see, I think Valen's Chosen's gone from the arena. But that would have gone up. Yeah. Like maybe all the buffs would actually go up. Anything with buff health. Power Shield would go up a bit. But the one that has the most effect is obviously the Bells one, because it adds the most health.
Yep. So I think that's correct. In terms of specific cards, I don't think any card has really surprised me that much. I think the one that has been quite good, and this is like the most surprising thing, has been Witchwood Grizzly. Right. Witchwood Grizzly has been quite good, and especially it's just really annoying in this super late game when both players have no cards left in the hand, right? Mm-hmm. And obviously that is a situation which, like, yeah, it's going to be good there, and like you're playing a card on like turn 16, right? Which is, but still, 3-11 taunt like during that time, pretty good, really hard to deal with. So I think that's been a card that has really sort of shaped at least the late game meta, if you even call that a meta. But that's a card that has had a pretty big impact, I think.
Yeah, Phantom Militia. is another card I want to talk about. We ended up actually on our release day putting this card 2 points on average above Witchwood Grizzly. We had an issue with echo cards on the video, and so we were like not terribly like, we were like, Phantom Militia is gonna move probably down, and instead it moved up. But on release day, Phantom Militia is 124. It's still 124 right now, and it's 2 points above Witchwood Grizzly. And I think everybody who's been playing it, at least average players, have not been having a great time with this card. It doesn't feel like it should be this powerful. But what I else have noticed is that Phantom Militia is one of the few cards where if you just look at per day on HS Replay's win rates, it's just been going up. That means every day people play with this card in the arena, they are figuring out a little more of how to use it. And this is not a card you ever play around. So it's not like you figure out how to defeat this card. It's a pretty easy card to defeat around once it comes on the board for you to figure out. Nothing new there. It's just 3/2/4s, and you never play around it, just pretending your opponent has it in their hand. So this card only, like win rate wise, if you're looking at it, it only gets better. And that's because it's a little echo cards are a little tricky to use. We've never seen anything like it. People don't have this like inherent like ability to gauge just how much better holding a Phantom Militia is to play on turn 6 or turn 9. Or how much it is to play now, or sometimes even on turn 9 you just play it as a 3-mana card. People don't have that sense, and as they have more and more of that sense, all the echo card win rates are going to go up a little. And of course, it's one of those cards where I think good players are going to do better with it because there's more choice involved.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's fair. And in terms of other cards, you know what? Rush is really good, right? Like, no surprise there. But the thing that we talked about, the awkwardness of Swift Messenger and Gilnean.
Oh, so true.
Yeah. Like, and I've streamed and I've talked to people about this, and they've seen, even if a card is really good, let's say 2/3 of the time, or just acceptable to good 2/3 of the time, the 1/3 of the time in which I so need it to be a 2/6, but it's a 6/2, or I really need it to be a 6/2, but it's horrible. A 2/6. That's it decreases the value significantly. And here's the thing, because I saw this thread on Arena HS, and someone made a comment of like, it's like, dude, Gilnean is ridiculous. They're like, every time I've seen it, it has been game-winningly good. And once again, another person caught onto it and made the comment. It's like, obviously, it's like you're just judging it by when you see it.
Every time I get Kodo'd, it feels really bad. I think Kodo is one of the best cards in the game.
Right. So look, we still rate those cards quite high, right? They're quite good. And it is true. Still, a 3/8.
Swift Messenger is above a Dark Iron Dwarf by 1 point.
Right.
It's like same as a Cult Master. Gilnean Royal Guard is above a Furious Etten. They're good cards.
They're really good cards. But it's one of those things where you do have to be careful. And especially, it's easy for someone to look at and be like, dude, this card beats me like every single time. It doesn't beat you every single time. It's just like it's sort of a mini version of the Death Knight argument. They're like, dude, every time I've seen a Death Knight, I've won. It's like, yeah, and you've also beaten Death Knights like so many times, but you just don't notice, right? And all those turns in which it's been awkward in your opponent's hand, you also don't notice because they're not going to play those cards.
And these cards are going to be better for average players than for good players because of the reads. We beat this issue to death the last Lightforge, so I won't go into it again. But I've lost a couple games already because of these reads. And if you have it in your hand, you're going to be screwing over your opponents by that. Whether you're a good player or not, because it doesn't take a good player to make those plays. That's the play that comes naturally to you. But it screws with the good player's reads. And anything that screws with the good player's reads is going to be better for average players than for good players. Anyway, those are some of the common cards. Any class cards I want to talk about? What have I played? I haven't touched Hunter or Druid yet. The Arcane Keysmith is super, 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 super annoying, as expected. I hate that card. I hate facing that card. It's not like it's an unfair card, but it's like, it's bad enough when your opponent plays a secret. When your opponent can play a secret and then choose what secret to play against you, you're just like, how's he mind gaming me right now? But then it's not even like you can do that directly because it's still random what cards he's offered in the first place. I think I'm overthinking it whenever I see that card come on the
I
board.
think you do. Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely a thing. We talked about Silver Sword, but yeah, best Paladin card, the first one anyway.
Yep.
Anything
As
else
for
you want to
other
talk about?
cards, no, not really. We can talk. So we've talked about Paladin a lot, right? How it's the
Mm-hmm.
top class. For rogues, like their cards are really good, especially something like Pickpocket. Man, that card is so freaking good. Um, that ability to just draw cards has closed out so many games, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, you kind of inefficiently draw cards, but you can have always have the option of drawing as many cards as you or not. You can draw up to 5 cards. You can draw like up to 5 cards, and that's really really freaking good. It can be either a super sprint or it could just be like draw 2 cards for 4 mana and then see what you want to play. So that one has also been really good. Other than that, yeah, like a lot of the neutrals, nothing has really stuck
Yeah,
out.
Militia Commander is bucketed lower than it
Oh,
should be. I think I forget where it's
right.
bucketed, but I keep finding myself picking it just based on Lightforge tier list. So if you're playing Warrior, yeah, Militia Commander is bucketed in the I kid you not fourth bucket.
What?
Yeah, the
For
fourth
those of you
bucket.
who aren't aware, Militia Commander is the 4 mana 2/5 with Rush, and during the first turn, it has +3 attack, so it is a charging 5/5 essentially, and then it becomes 2 attack.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, that's somehow in the fourth bucket. We have it as a 134. It should be in like the second bucket. Um, but yeah, it's in the fourth bucket, and so that's really good. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what else to say. Oh, because we haven't mentioned this, and just in case, I left this off my list by accident. Um, you had reminded me of this. Vicious Scale Hide is bucketed really high.
Oh,
I forget where it's
right.
bucketed, but it's the 2 mana 1/3 Lifesteal Rush card that's neutral, and it sucks. And we have it rated as sucking, but Blizzard somehow thought it was going to be like a pretty good card. So it's up there with some ridiculous picks if you look at Lightforge tier scores. Don't take that card. I've used it. It's not. It's as advertised. As in,
Yep.
it's bad. All right. Maybe that's it. Do you have any question from the goat for today?
It was just basically you've seen the cards now. What card do you like flavor wise? Whether it's the voice or sort of the entrance animation, just anything cool.
Um, I don't know. I'm such a boring player. I don't even I don't
You
even
are.
remember what the entrance animations and things are.
This is very true.
Oh my god, I can't even think about any of the. First of all, I haven't played that many new cards because the new cards are like mostly bucketed up and they're like not very good to begin with. But no, I don't have an answer to this. What about you?
I like Sound the Bells because it's just like every single time they buff, it's like a bell sounds. I know it's weird. It just fits for some reason. It's like you keep on ringing the bell, and this thing keeps on,
That's true.
bro. I don't know. It's once again we used to have like talking Murlocs,
Yeah.
right? And a lot more colorful stuff. Everything about this expansion has just been kind of like,
Right?
meh, yeah, yeah. It's
Like I
kind of
don't
been,
mind it from a balance perspective, but it's just not a very exciting expansion.
yeah. So that's basically it.
All right. That was a question from the goat brought to you by our patrons at patreon.com/grinninggoat. Thank you guys so much for supporting us. And until next time, this is Adwicta.
This is Merps. Good luck in the arena.
All right, so I did something very bad.
What?
I forgot to hit record.
Okay, well, we're not doing that over again.
We're not doing it over again. We're going to